There we go. Hold on. There we go. All right. Been too long. The reason why I'm doing this live instead of doing I'm too tired and it's too hot to edit, so just do this live. I'm live streaming. Go back to sleep. Either way, shut up. All right. Anyway, prompted in a little thing here because basically the latest news. I'll deal with these if somebody comes in the chat. But basically, the news coming out of Comic-Con about what new stuff is coming up from the Star Trek thing. It's like, the only one I'm interested in is Lower Decks, frankly, because that's the only story I have any emotional investment in. The rest of them, it's like, why? You know, I've heard very good things about Picard season 3. Basically, the way Rob Burnett tells it, it's like nobody else wanted the job of Picard, which tells me, no, it's not doing that great. Nobody wanted to take this thing on. The fans are too pissed off at it, really. Yeah, and these little things tell you a lot of what's going on behind the scenes that they're not really to admit to. Yeah, I gotta get this chopped. So in comes Terry Metalis, who apparently huge Next Generation fan, and he's actually he got the entire crew back together pretty much, and they're doing a show that apparently what Rob's seen like the first chunk of it. No finished effects, but the storyline apparently. And what he said of the storyline in his chat, like, okay, I can get behind this. This sounds more like it. And in the teaser bits where they're just showing and the little voiceovers, Patrick Stewart finally sounds like Jean-Luc Picard and not some grumpy old Yorkshireman waiting to die. They found Jean-Luc Picard finally. So now we can say Jean-Luc Picard is back. Finally. We don't know who the hell that was those past 2 seasons. Now we got Jean-Luc Picard. So I'm cautiously looking forward to that. And like I said, Lower Decks, I can't wait for that to come back. The one thing, though, that is worrying me is they're talking about a crossover between Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. And they're, just the logistics, because they're different centuries. It's like Lower Decks is like on the original 25th century. Strange New Worlds is supposedly still in the mid 23rd. So there's almost 150 years in between. And also, beating this dead horse till it's well past glue. And it's like, they're not the same. No, it's like, it is obvious. It's, that this is not the same. They have rebooted and they're not willing to admit it. No, it's canon. Bull. Quit lying to yourselves. Quit lying to the audience. This is a reboot. Admit it already. No thing about, you're going to believe us, your own lying eyes. I'll believe my own lying eyes, thank you. Because I got, this, I don't know how many copies of this I've got. I got, and right next to it, The World of Star Trek with David Gerrold from 73 and also Trouble Tribbles. I got the books, okay? I got the reference and my own freaking memories. And being inoculated from 9 months, like 2, okay? I know Star Trek. This ain't Star Trek, okay? It's a close approximation. And Star New World is a good show, only because Discovery and Picard set the bar so damn low. All it has to do is not outright suck at me. It's great. That's right. It's the old, Eddie Murphy thing. You've been starving for the week, and someone throws you a saltine cracker. That would be the best saltine cracker you ever had. Oh yeah, we've got salted. This is great coffee. Yeah, right. But I've seen enough breakdowns of what goes on in Strange New Worlds. It ain't that great, guys. They can't even keep straight within their own thing. And that goes thing about Alex Kurtzman. Oh, no one can keep track of it all, so you're not even bothering to try. In fact, using that as an excuse to start changing stuff willy-nilly. And during this Lower Decks panel, this became very clear when some guy came up there and asked Mike McMahon about when Rutherford was going through the memories, and he wound up at a Gorn wedding. And we see the Gorn more or less, the way we saw him in Arena. How do you reconcile that with what we just saw in Strange New Worlds, where there's suddenly just reptilian versions of the xenomorphs from Alien? I mean, McMahon did a very good dodge. Well, don't assume there's a monoculture and they're all the Gorn are the same. It's, yeah, nice evasion, but he shouldn't have been put in that position in the first damn place, Alex, because you guys screwed it up by saying, "Hey, aliens is cool, let's do that." And never thinking, again, the old thing, they never think these things through. This is supposed to be a fairly sophisticated spacefaring race. How the hell do you get that from this bunch of chest bursters? That's not an intelligent race. That's a bunch of it's a species of parasites. They don't develop anything. Just eat what they want and move on. They're big, ugly reptilian locusts. There's no way that kind of a race could develop into a spacefaring race with colonies and other things, or start claiming other systems. So the thing is, when they start matching this up, trying to match up Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds, there's going to be a problem there. Because internally, Mike McMahon's always saying this ain't going to work, guys. Something's got to give. Either then to finally admit this is an alternate timeline, something doesn't match up here big time, or they're going to ruin Lower Decks. And there goes the rest of the fan base. Because Lower Decks is kind of the last holdout for the old hardcore fan base that can take a joke. I think that's pretty much right there. Lower Decks, again, not only doesn't contradict Canon, it reinforces it every chance it gets. With the constant references and Easter eggs here and there. Is there yes, we're in the Star Trek universe. The real Star Trek universe. Well, when they show a freighter, it's an animated series freighter. You see the skeleton of the 40-foot Spock from the Infinite Vulcan. When they show a picture of Kirk and Spock on a pad, it's Kirk and Spock from the animated series. A screen grab. They didn't even alter to match the animated style of the show. That's it. It's a case of, where the shows where Kurtzman has the least amount of input and control, those are the good ones. And so far, that amounts to strictly Lower Decks and Prodigy. And I guess Strange New Worlds has been reduced. That's a Akiva Goldsman thing. And then Prodigy get a few notes. Remember to throw out a reference to Michael Burnham. So that, and I'm already imagining dialogue between Weimler and Mariner. I'm figuring like they somehow go through, the shuttle goes through some kind of temporal displacement wave, and they go up and what? It says NCC 17. That's not the Enterprise. It's twice the size of that. What the hell? Check the chronometer readings. Where the hell are we? It's like, Boimler, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. That thing's the size of a Galaxy-class starship. It's supposed to be Constitution? No. This is wrong. This is all wrong. If they do that, they might have a good episode on their hands. So the way they're supposed to going to work it is you'll have Mariner and Boimler in live action. So it'll be Tawny. I'm blanking on the name all of a sudden because I got caught in Jack Quaid in live action somehow on Pike's Enterprise. I don't know. Maybe if it's a holodeck thing, again, you can get a little thing where Boimler's nitpicking nothing. That's not right. No, he doesn't know that. Who the hell is that? It's, you can do a lot of that. And if they do that, they might have something to be putting the Strange New World writers in their place. Say, you ain't canon. We know you ain't canon. Because the whole thing, the way the argument I'm getting back, well, the showrunners say it's canon, so it's canon. That's not how it works. Newsflash, they may have the legal right to do what they want with it. That's not going to make it canon. Because they're only the creator of the property or who the creator appoints to caretake the property, only they can really determine canon. And that pretty much went by the wayside in 2005 with Enterprise canceling. Because, again, Roddenberry, of course, died in 91. And then Rick Berman, was his era. He was handpicked by Rick Berman and Michael Piller and all them. And he's like, take care of my baby. Because he knew by then his usefulness was coming to an end. I mean, he was already kind of going there when they started the show. That's why he was essentially retired. So only the creator of the thing, like Arthur Conan Doyle. Again, a lot of this goes back to Sherlock Holmes, fandom. What is the Holmes canon? Only the Arthur Conan Doyle novels are. Not all the fanzines that were produced at the time. Not the adaptations. I mean, Curtis Armstrong did an interview on him on the Mission Log podcast. I'm not sure what the connection was there, but he got there. But he's talking about he loved the show Sherlock, and I think it was okay. But he is under no illusions that either of these shows were proper Holmes canon. And as far as Star Trek goes, Gene Roddenberry, not even Rod Roddenberry, had any say in Alex Kurtzman being put in charge of this thing. He in the Roddenberry state has no control over what they do with it. Largely because Roddenberry sold the rights to Paramount a long time ago because it was the money was tight, and he needed them. Even it was like $10,000. It went a lot further back then, but Rod is in there for fan cred points. He's not there because of anything. They don't need Roddenberry Entertainment as a part of the production process. They've got all the right thing. All they need to put is based on Star Trek created by Gene Roddenberry. That's all they need to get away with this. They're being nice to Rod and having him in there, but he has no say in it. Okay. And I'm not sure I trust that anyway because Rod was not steeped in this stuff. He was a Star Wars kid. Star Trek was something that kept his dad from being around as much as he wanted to. Yeah? He's pretty much a late arrival to the whole Star Trek thing. That's why I did a documentary about it, discovering what the hell his dad was doing. And why is everybody so nuts about it? But, sorry, legal ownership does not give you the right to change things around. The canon was pretty much set when Enterprise wrapped up. That's it. At that point, you either adhere to the canon or you're not, okay? And since they have not made any attempt, not only does the Kurtzman shows make no attempt to adhere to canon, they go out of the way to disrupt it half the time. The Gorn thing. Picard's first season being supposedly based on the episode Measure of a Man and Next Gen, and it was clear they never watched the damn thing. Because the conclusion of that episode would make the entire premise of that season impossible. It violated the basic premise that they set up of establishing that Data has legal rights. And those rights would extend to any other sentient android. They used that later in Voyager when the Doctor is trying to, sue it under the same rationale. That he is a sentient being on his own, and he deserves the same rights as androids do. But these guys just, they don't respect canon. They don't, know him. They use it to strip mine for ideas. And then they'll say, oh, that looks interesting, and not go through the entire thing and what were the ramifications of this. Like just invoking the Gorn in the first place. You watch, if they had bothered to watch Arena, it's made quite clear that Kirk had never even heard of a Gorn. There's no thing in the mysterious, a creature the Metron calls a Gorn. Like he'd never heard the word before. I think they would have had some briefings about hostile races, especially in the area, and certainly they would be in the area. And also when they strip mine Balance of Terror for that last episode of Strange New Worlds, with no screen credit whatsoever for Paul Schneider. They just cut and pasted his script and messed it all up in the process, too, by screwing with the character Centurion and making him a snidely whiplash, thing. Again, they also missed the, like Rob Burnett always goes on about, in Star Trek, you don't have villains. You have adversaries. There's a difference, They're not being evil to be evil. They have their own goals, which contradict with your hero's goals, and you try and work out a solution if you can. And unfortunately, the solution on is, a photon torpedo up the exhaust pipe. But you try, okay? You try and understand where they're coming from. And the Romulans in Balance of Terror, the commander's going, present for the Predator, another war. There must always be that way, And also, and watching a Major Grin video, or I think it was Major Grin or something, but comparing the two, Balance of Terror, and then the last episode of Strange New Worlds, and where it matched the parts where they cut and pasted. I don't think they even screened the episode for the cast, because Ethan Peck's delivery of Spock, totally different. No, isn't any subtlety that was in Nimoy. And also, when the Romulan's about to self-destruct, it looks like it's just another day at the office over in the Romulan ship, whereas in the original series, it was clear they'd been beaten to hell. There's smoke, a thing, the commander himself is, one last duty to perform. And the other guy, one last duty to perform. Bye. It's like even when they're copying, they miss the entire point. They got to put that little spin on it. It's like, no. It's kind of like, I bet the Mona Lisa looks better if we put eyebrows on there. No, you don't mess with that stuff, okay? Again, not necessarily comparing Star Trek to Da Vinci, but certain things they've done fine without you for 50 freaking years. They don't need you improving things, okay? Okay, Roots Newt. I don't think he's going to, so I'll read it off here for replay. I've been really enjoying Lower Decks. Despite not being a fan of Star Trek beforehand, the jokey but still often playing straight nature of the show makes me interested in other things. Gee, that's how you do it. This is true gatekeeping on the Lower Decks side. You don't, it's not keeping, it's matter. Hey, come on in. Here's some good stuff you might like. Yeah. It's old fans that bring in the new fans. And Lower Decks is stocked top to bottom with old-time fans, between the writers and the producers, and also the cast. Dawn Lewis, who plays Captain Freeman. Well, the panel was talking about how she and her brothers are huge fans of Star Trek back in the day, and talking about when you met Nichelle Nichols, she's crying because she's met and got to be friends with her at the parties. So it's a big deal to her to be in a Star Trek show, and of course the other cast are also fans. So. And that's the thing. That's the way the proper gatekeeping goes. You tend to the gate and you're letting people in. Hey, come on. This is good stuff. Check this out. But there's also a thing that's pointing out that, no, don't bother with those idiots. They don't know what they're doing. These guys know what they're doing. So, and supposedly 2 more shows in production. Yeah. I believe it when I see it, Alex. All right. Then he walked that Section 31 kerfuffle will die on the vine because he clearly does not understand the entire concept of what Section 31 is supposed to be. Again, because I don't think he ever actually watched, DS9. I know a while it's like in the writers supposedly, what's Deep Space Nine? These are writers in the Star Trek writers room. Never heard of DS9. Walter Mosley got off early. It got off easy by being able to get out of there. He was surrounded by morons. Okay. Kristen Byer, you got a lot of explaining to do when this is all wrapped up and done. Okay. It's either going to be a hostage video from her or confession. One of the two. She's either collaborating or just can't say anything about it for whatever reason. And I think Rod is on there. It's like he doesn't have any input in there. Okay, he wasn't really in favor of Lower Decks, so he's going to try how the comedy thing would go. As far as whether Gene would like Lower Decks, I don't know. Depending on what day you'd catch him, In his later days, when he started getting a little too precious about it, he probably would have been largely against it because there's not a comedy show. But I think if he caught, because he was not opposed to comedy, we had a pilot, APO 924, which was kind of MASH before MASH. It was in 1962. It was set in World War II, and it was a lot of what about the kind of the downtime. There was a lot of time where it's like nothing. You're not fighting, and these guys are not warriors. They're regular guys who got drafted into this thing half the time. We're run have to do their duty, but it's like they're got time was like the pilot shows. It was centered on three characters: James T. Irvine. Yeah, Kurt is not Lower Decks is Kurtzman's check only in the fact that Kurtzman's on there by legal necessity. Kurtzman has no input into that show. The most he does is ask a question or two of him, but he does not input anything. He doesn't say do this, do that. No, he lets McMahon run his shop over there. And that's why there are no real references to anything on the Kurtzman side, anything in the live action. The closest you got is like Borman made a Section 31 crack, and when Q showed up, he talked, "Oh, Picard's so boring, quoting Shakespeare and making wine." That's it. Klingons show up, they look like Klingons. You get someone from that, like they invoke, Gary Mitchell. He's not in a Discovery uniform, and he's not in that misshapen jacket thing they got. No, he's in an original pilot era uniform. If they could have a little clearer, I'm sure they would have made a point to, yeah, that's Gary Lockwood. Yeah. I think a lot, I put up the fight for Lower Decks in the point of it honors Star Trek to such a degree. They are fanboys themselves. And they make a point that the characters are fanboys of Starfleet and Starfleet history. Boimler probably has the Enterprise logs from the time they left Space Dock. So that'll be an interesting thing if they're doing this crossover thing and Admiral April shows up and that's not what I thought Admiral April. I thought, oh wait, what time? He's supposed to be a Commodore, and wasn't he a white guy? Like I said, if they play it off that way, they'll make it. But it's like there's only two ways this can go for that crossover episode. Is either they admit it's an alternate timeline and thus a reboot, or they ruin Lower Decks. Best case, they produce an episode that can be safely ignored. If it can be just isolated to that's just a Stranger Worlds thing, we ignore that. No. Yeah, but as far as if you don't like the animation style, if you don't like the humor, you're not even that rapid fire, referencing, then I can't help you. That's up to you at that point. But as far as no, it is not Kurtzman Trek in that sense. Kurtzman doesn't do anything with the show. I think he's probably not interested in animation that much. He doesn't know animation. He doesn't work in animation. So there's a lot they can get away with over on Lower Decks. The part goes right over his head. But yeah, Roddenberry had nothing to do with Kurtzman being. But in fact, he wasn't originally part of the thing. It was Brian Fuller was, somehow was talking. Les Moonves, because Les Moonves hated Star Trek. He didn't like science fiction in general, but he really didn't like Star Trek for whatever reason. God knows why. And I don't really feel like asking him. I don't care. But he likes money, and he knew they could make a lot of money with a new Star Trek show, so they started bringing in people in there. Even brought in Seth MacFarlane at one point, and the pitch he had, I'm pretty sure, was essentially the Orville. Set on a lower rung ship and getting them down on the Federation flagship, where everyone's got to be perfect and upstanding. The lower levels where the standards are a little more lax, so you can have a little more fun. And Moonves passed on that, and we have the Orville as a result. So either way, and that's what a writer and producer does. Okay, I'll take just file off the serial numbers instead of the cells. I have loops in the back. I'd like to see a Star Trek version of the Orville. And then Brian Fuller managed to get the thing going with his, because he really wanted to do an anthology show like American Horror Story, where one season would be the Discovery, and another season would be like Klingon Homeworld, and you know, and they said, "No, well, just do a Discovery and see how that goes." But things started going weird, and they, because Fuller was working on another show, American Gods, doing other things there, so attention was divided. And it turns out, shocker, shockers, it's not that easy to put on a Star Trek show. Oh my God! Imagine the things when you're like, you got to do what? No, you can't just buy the stuff off the rack. You got to make it yourself, and that costs bucks. And the old thing of are you going to do what because Doug Drexler's made a great point of that. This is Star Trek is a period piece. Okay. Yeah, that's the whole taking the premise of with the original animated show did. They can show things they couldn't show in live action. At least a whole lot cheaper, because you can draw 100 hoarders for the same price as you can 100 Klingons. But the whole thing of with a very defined each era of Star Trek is very well defined of what the things look like, what Starfleet ships and what uniforms look, what the tech looks like. You go around the time of the Cage, it's going to be a hand laser. It's going to be the turtleneck with all the same color as the rest of the shirt, straight stripes on there, and the badge is a little smaller, spikes on the engine nacelles, that sort of thing. You go, about 10 years later, then you got glowy wing, the black turtleneck, wavy lines in there, phasers instead of hand lasers. Communicators are a little more stylish, that sort of thing. You go into the movie area. Okay, you're doing the motion picture. You got the pajamas thing. Oh, and now the wife checks in. All right. You go past that a few years, you get into the Monster Maroons. And the phasers start changing things around, and the ships, what the ships look like. And those Maroons stick on all the way through to the Enterprise C. And even when Picard graduates from the Academy, he still weren't, Monster Maroon. They don't get the spandex onesies until a few years after that. So it's very well defined what era looks like. And you start mucking around with that, guess what? You just rebooted. You can't get away with it. It's not just a visual. You change that look, you have changed the whole damn thing. So when Discovery comes along, it's supposed to be 2250s. It looks nothing like the 2250s. The uniforms are totally out of whack. The ships are, way too advanced and look nothing like the technology of the time. The Klingons Here's it, Klingorks. That says it all right there. Well, she's right next door in the bedroom. Anyway, I don't know how the hell they thought they'd get away with this crap. Okay? And unfortunately, with some of the supposed fans, they are getting away with this crap. Because they own it, they think they get away with it. What we say goes. Bull, okay? Let me tell you something, Alex. There was a time in the 70s. There was no new Star Trek. They occasionally get a novel out, okay? Otherwise, it was fanzine stories and reruns. Why do you think we know this stuff so well? We watched them 15 freaking times each before the first movie came around, okay? At least 50, By the mid-70s, most of the actors' residual payments had run out. The contract back then was they get paid like the first 5 times an episode was repeated. And as many stations that were rerunning those episodes, they ran out very quickly. So that's why there a lot of reason why they're so eager to jump on the movie bandwagon, because they weren't getting paid. They were doing conventions or summer stock and occasionally commercials. Nimoy and Shatner was really getting regular work. The rest of them were like, yeah, the conventions was their job. D. Kelly had largely retired by that point. He already had his career back in the 40s and 50s. If I thought I'd get away with it without, I got the Tomorrow show from about 76, 77, where he's got D. Kelly and Walter Koenig and Jimmy Doohan and Harlan Nelson, guy who ran the early convention, sitting around and talking about this. And at the time, Gene was supposed to be there, but he had a cold or something and couldn't make it. But at that point, it's like he had passed on a note to D. Kelly and said, "We have a start date. We don't have a script yet, but that's fine. There's plenty of people that have scripts and don't have a start date, so we'll whirl with it." But this is really just because you own the thing doesn't mean you can do whatever you want with it, okay? I mean, legally, yeah, there's nothing we can do to stop them. They put out this crap. I said, we're going to get 5 years of Strange New Worlds, whether we like it or not, because they need content for the service. That's part of the thing. Well, if it was so bad, then how come they're doing fine? Because the ratings don't matter anymore. Nobody cares about the numbers. They just need content for the streaming service. Okay. And again, yeah, that's the reason why they call them uniforms. They're supposed to be the same. Yeah, and you can see in the Star Trek, the Star Wars animation, you can tell by the trooper armor. Okay, you're in the Clone Wars, you're in the Republic, you're in the Empire. See that evolution going on there. That was back when George actually had some control over the whole thing. You can supervise and say, okay, yep, you have a little approved stamp. But if you're gonna, and I keep bringing up, and I might other people, but it's a period piece of a future. And Drexler puts it, it's a period piece for a future that never happened. Okay, but it's still very well defined, and that's one thing I kind of irritated about. Even fan productions like Action Arm. It's supposed to be pilot era. The Enterprise hasn't even been finished. It's still, getting fixed up, finalized in dry dock, waiting for April to take command. And the uniforms they worked up, I know, and in the Action Arm, they showed them, in the proper uniforms, but they couldn't resist doing their own uniforms with a black collar. And they don't do what the hell are you doing, Alex? You're not just twat, but you damn well know better than that. Okay, you got enough examples of your own. And yes, I know I'm fidgeting too much. Right. I think I'm picking up some of Jesse Milestone's habits here, just flicking with my hair. Right. But I got something here. Serious itch in my ears here. I think no thing sometimes you got a hair that just kind of curls in there and starts trying to set up shop in your ear canal. All right. Yeah, I think they got very specific. I wish I know where my phasers are in the tricorder, but I can't get at them right now because there's also about 3 tons of stuff sitting on them. Not 3 tons, but there's a few hundred pounds of various stuffed in bags sitting right on where, I know they're right about there, about a foot in. If I could get to it and pull the whole box out and have all kinds of stuff to show off. But it's like, no. Counterexample. You can tell which doctor you're doing by which sonic screwdriver, Here's Capaldi's. Here's Tom Baker's. And let's see. Here's John Pertwee. And here's Matt Smith. And hold on, give me. And got a David Tennant. That's one of the work. Okay. I got a couple of them actually. Some got David Tennant and Christopher Eccleston covered. But yeah, if you're going to do a Doctor Who story set in either of any of those doctors, you better have the right screwdriver. You're going to hear from it from the Whovians. Yeah, Kabuki is still hiding somewhere in the back. We'll get to him eventually. God. We'll be doing a little digging with a Q-tip pretty soon. Make sure I'm not actually bleeding. All right. But that's pretty much my main point here, though. It's like, just because you own it doesn't mean you can change everything around, okay? Another way I put it in some of these arguments is like, you got Canon, okay? Let's just take this, just as the Star Trek Bible. If you don't adhere to this, you're not changing this. You're not, if your new product that says Star Trek doesn't line up with established canon, that doesn't make the old stuff non-canon. It makes yours non-canon. You're not going to change the canon. That's why it's the canon. That is the established official record. You can either line up with it or you're not in it. Okay, that's how it works. And you guys weren't put in charge of. That's why, again, Lower Decks. They're not changing anything. They're adding to it. This whole new division of Starfleet that we never knew about, but has to be there for anything to really make sense. Someone's got to take out the garbage. Someone's got to deliver the pizzas. Someone's got to follow up on these first contact missions and start setting things up. Setting up the gear, making the restaurant reviews, that sort of thing. That's not what the Enterprise is going to do. They're already got traipsing off to the next adventure. This is where you bring in the support ships, and this is what the Lower Decks thing is part of. This is the support fleet, or I call it the Starfleet Merchant Marines. But these guys are also very pro Starfleet. They came in wanting to. A lot of these guys want to be out there exploring and making first contacts and stuff, but they're not quite up there with the crews that do make it. So, but you're gonna get a job somewhere and start. Okay, we don't want to waste you. You're enthusiastic. We'll put you down here. You prove yourself. You're in the minors, okay? Mainline Starfleet, with the black and the gray shoulders and the big ships that go out making first contacts and fighting the front lines. That's your major leagues. Cerritos is like AAA, okay? Not quite there, but you interact with them. You can occasionally swap back and forth. Yeah. God, this itch is bad. Okay, let's see. Some scenes benefit greatly from a lack of standard uniforms. It makes Halo characters, especially in Covenant, even cooler to have those. But it feels weird. Yeah, I know. It's like, let's go and show that up here. Yeah, it's like, again, there's a reason why they're called uniforms. They're the same, okay? You gotta have, because they'll just put this up there, again, very specific gear and regulations, and they're supposed to have, that's why you don't, when I was in the Air Force, I didn't just show up in whatever I wanted to. I had to show up in the proper uniform. I couldn't come traipsing into work, wearing jeans and a t-shirt and whatever ball cap I had handy. No, I had to be in the proper uniform. Now, I had choices on what uniform, but it had to be uniform. It had to be authorized. Air Force Regulation 3510, that's your dress code. And they go into very details. It was kind of funny when they put out an update and update kind of, whoops, you messed up there. And then the correction will come out a week later. All right. But yeah, even, I've heard different things about Halo, the series. It's like they didn't pay attention all day to the game. They're doing their own thing. And he supposedly, we're based on the books. Well, they even based on the books very well. So, and even you're still supposed to tell who are the Spartans and who are the by what kind of armor they're wearing. I think. But all this thing about just there are portions of this. I don't know how many are actual fans have been, but some people say, "Oh, I've been fan them. I'm fine with it." Well, then you're really not very discerning, are you? If you're okay with what they're doing over on, strange, you're easily entertained, aren't you? You know, because in a way, canon is just a fancy word for your show's backstory. And some shows make a point of not having consistency in the back, like for the sake of the Simpsons. How many decades has Bart been in fourth grade? That sort of thing. Or South Park. It was for several years. It was a big thing that every episode Kenny McCormick dies horribly, and he's right back in the next episode. I mean, there was one I think it was maybe in a Christmas episode. It was the first time that Kenny didn't die, and they made a point of it. But and something feels weird. And they zoom in on Kenny. He's going, he's bouncing up and down because he didn't die. But South Park is not a show you can take seriously. They do take it seriously. It's a farce, okay? Simpsons, the same thing. Family Guy, the same thing. Peter Griffin should have died several different ways from Tuesday, just in the course of that show. But no, they keep on going on. How long has Chris been in school? Okay. Shouldn't Meg be kicking out grandkids by now? But the thing, for a serious dramatic show, if you don't have that consistent backstory and you're not consistent within the universe you're supposed to be in, you can't take the show seriously. And they can't even be consistent. Sometimes within this same episode, they screw themselves up. And they sure as hell are not consistent with their supposedly established universe. It's like, let's say they wanted to do a continuation series of Gunsmoke. Now, whatever. Okay, I don't know Halo that well, so I can't really go into it. But they decide to, let's say we take Gunsmoke, but for a modern audience, we're going to put Marshall Dillon on a Harley with a Glock 17 on his hip. Festus is now a black woman with a couple of kids, no father to be seen. Miss Kitty's a trans man. Let's go ahead and race swap Marshall Dillon. In fact, let's go whole hog. Marsha Dillon. And yet still claim that it's part of the same universe that James Arness and they were doing back in the day. That's what they're doing. That's what they're trying to pull off. They're saying this is still part of the same universe. Bull. I mean, it may sound unusual to accuse someone of lying about a fictional universe, but that's what they're doing. They are lying to the audience. And I'm not one to sit by and let that go unchallenged. Because any other thing where the writers have essentially lied to the audience, it never ends well. You might be able to keep the joke up for a while, but anytime you start with essentially the premise, everything you know is a lie, you just sealed your own fate. Because a number of people have been able to pull that off, or you can probably count on one hand. And that probably only works if the property you're starting with is crap to begin with, where nobody cares what happened. Please change it. Like Battlestar Galactica was essentially that was a clean reboot. They didn't make any pretense of trying to be continuation of the original series. And they had to, and be honest, look, as much as we love those characters and the toys and the ships, most of Battlestar Galactica stunk on ice. It was not a good show. Partly because they were not given the time to fully flesh things out. They just had to, get a script idea. Here, go. We don't have any time. They do blatant rip-offs, like the gun on Ice Station Zero was essentially a rip-off of Guns in Navarone. You know, Apollo squaring off against that Cylon gunslinger. It was High Noon. Okay, or Shane, take your pick. They didn't really start getting their feet under them until the very end when they had a lot of scripts that had been percolating for a while. And they started getting a little settled, but by then the axe had fallen. And that's it's similar to what Star Trek Fate actually was. They're too expensive for the numbers they were pulling in. And I'll tell you what, the web. I'm going to put that in the chat. The website I've been. Oh, in fact, there's a new stuff up here too. But this has been a real fun website for me. I'm trying to get the full record here. Facttrek.com. They put a lot, Yeah, they showed one as originals in a museum. Okay. But they also made a point that they changed quite a bit. No, facttrek.com. They go about find out what really happened. Let's scrape away all the myths and all the stories about everything. This person says that happened. Let's find what really happened. Start digging through newspaper, variety, various records and find out what the hell was actually going on. Like, and even with making of Star Trek, it was done during the hiatus between second and third season, but they'd already gotten word. But you saw the thing; they already got the word they were going to get Friday nights at 10, and they were calling a death slot then. This was published in '68, but they go that was it really? Because they looked at the thing. Okay, what? Look at from this NBC exec's position. What are we looking at? We got to do something. We're trying to get this show to take off. Really, they didn't quite understand what they were doing, but they had this show. They invested a lot of money. They wanted it to become big. They thought they had something on their hands. You can do something with it. I think the mistake they did make was make it Fridays at 10, because it was already on Fridays. I think if they just kept it the same time slot, just earlier in the evening, it might have done better. But if they had gone Monday nights, early in the evening, they'd have been going up against Gunsmoke and the Lucy show, oddly enough, which would have been ironic. Even though Lucy was already gone from Desert at that point. It went kind of ironic. I don't know who ABC was running at the time. I have to look it up. But it would have gone from being in a possible death slot to a kamikaze slot. And they may not have even finished the third season. They might have been for 13 episodes, and that's it. But also it's not necessarily the whole thing about being a death slot. I think I don't know, because Mission Impossible had virtually the same demographic audience, and yes, they were using demographics back then. There was some tweaking by the 70s, but they did have demographics measuring, and they were looking at it. It had the same demographics as Man from U.N.C.L.E., and Man from U.N.C.L.E. did beautifully in that slot. And looking in later years, the X-Files, and they're up against all three networks. They're starting on Fox. They did great on that time slot. So it's not necessarily true to assume that, well, that's it, we're dead. They could have done so. And I think if and Roddenberry said after, he probably, in thinking back on it, he probably did make a mistake by stepping away, but he also felt he's got to keep his word. He said, if I don't get that money slot, I can't produce it. So he felt he had to stick by his guns there. But in later years, he probably should have stuck with it, because at least that last year would have looked better. The ratings might have held. Because when they brought in Fred Freiberger and his people and started alienating various people, they really cheesed off Dorothy Fontana and David Gerald and Robert and Bob Justman. Bob Justman should have gotten the gig, frankly. He did get shafted by Roddenberry. He should have gotten the producer gig, because he was there from the very beginning. But when it became clear to the audience the rot had set in, that's when the rate, and about halfway through, when it was clear the quality is not there, that's when the ratings really took a nosedive, because they were still holding fairly steady for the first several weeks. But after a while, it became clear that the things have changed. This ain't the same show, and that's when, by the time they got to the end there, I mean, even when the last episode ran, Turnabout Intruder was preempted for a long time. It didn't run till June, and there's a few reruns in between there, but they got preempted by a few things. So they were like the last original episode, and they aired on a Tuesday, and the ratings weren't very. They were like an 8 point something, which now they would kill to get. Star Trek's worst ratings on NBC, they would slaughter whole nurseries of children to get those ratings now. Because when Discovery ran on CBS proper and not just on whatever CBS All Access, when they put on the network, they canceled shows one episode in for better ratings than what Discovery got. That was a case of they're just filling a time slot. It's that or reruns of Let's Make a Deal. Okay. And they probably would have gotten better ratings, but it's like they were barely scraping by 1 million viewers. And that's usual. That's grounds for immediate cancellation usually on a major network. Okay, we've been at this almost an hour. So I think I've beaten this one into the ground enough here. So I know that other stuff going on. She-Hulk, that looks great. They apparently, I'm guessing what happened on that one is somebody walked into the showrunner's office with a big old omnibus of John Byrne's run on She-Hulk, plopped that down, saying, "Do that or clear out your office," because they got it cold. The attitude is right. Jen Walters always had baby ego. She loved being She-Hulk. That's why in the book, before there was a thing where she's locked in the form after the graphic novel, Sensational She-Hulk. We're going to bring it down the Shield helicarrier. It was dealing with a bunch of radioactive cockroaches. And get back, Big Zam by Reed Richards. And I'm sorry, I got some bad news, Jen. Your radiation with the cockroaches is fused. You're now stuck as She-Hulk. You can't change back to Walters. A couple beats. So what's the bad news? She's always preferred being She-Hulk. Instead of being mousy little Jen Walters who gets pushed around and ignored, no one's going to ignore a 6'7" bright green who can juggle pickups. Okay. And I don't know if they changed that back somehow or whatever. Who knows? I barely pay attention. If John Byrne wasn't right now, I read it with Steve Gerber because he had a good handle on it too. But everybody else, bring him back, making it into a savage show, and then it's like, what the hell have you done to poor Shulte? There's a reason why people love that character. The way John Byrne did it was great. I mean, she was breaking the fourth wall long before Deadpool was. Usually yelling at Byrne, "Byrne, what are you got me doing here?" It's like second episode, mole men are coming at her, and she turns the camera. "Mole men, Byrne, mole men. This is what you're gonna be doing. Second episode, second issue." Yeah. There's a lot of that, and they apparently got some of that in this show too, where well, if you want to go back to your life as I can respect that. She turns to the camera and says, "He doesn't believe that." So, sorry, but I like what they're doing with She-Hulk. I can ignore the dodgy CGI if the writing's good. Okay, and that's the thing with older shows. Oh, that was part of the charm. No, that was stuff you ignored in favor of the story and the writing and the acting. People did not appreciate the charm of the shaky sets on Doctor Who. They ignored it for the sake of the story they were enjoying. Or the styrofoam rocks in Star Trek. They ignored that because they liked the story they were being told. They enjoyed the characters. They were there performing the story. There was no appreciating of that campy charm of the styrofoam rocks and the whatever kitschiness of the thing. It's stuff it's a setting, you go with it, okay? Because you're enjoying the story. So I think ranted enough for now. So PayPal link in the description, and if I think I've got the problem solved with Fortnite. It's still a little bit rough here and there, but I hopefully will be able to get it straightened out enough that I can actually do some streaming. It's been pretty good lately because I actually been able to get some stuff accomplished in there. Because for a while, one of the things we had to defeat Darth Vader in a fight. And the way the game was acting, no freaking way. Be lucky if I could find Vader before the storm took me. But finally, able to get that, took care of Vader. Did it in the Doctor Doom scan just to add a little irony to it. And like, okay, yeah, you pretender to the wrong. Unfortunately, it still tends to lock up on occasion. Like when you try and get out of the temple, you're trying, because to get out of there, you got to, grab the idol and run, sprint out of there. That's when it locks up on me. And that is the wrong time to be locking up. When you got a giant boulder coming around, I mean, you still got the points for his own, but it's like, no, you want to live long enough to get outside the cave. But anyway, so PayPal description in the description. Other donation sites are on other videos or on my page, the about page. Most of them are kind of doing like Patreon. I think all the patrons have left. I need to get more patrons. I also need to do something, on there, but I'm not sure what to do on there, at this point. Yeah, something might come to me as I start building the channel back up and start doing more stuff. My subscribe star is still frozen, just like 25 cents short of paying out. It only pays like $50. It's like a $49.75 right now. Because somebody jumped in there and then jumped back out. This is a tough living, okay? It is tough to make it, especially when they keep cracking down and changing the algorithm around and yada, yada, yada. It helps. Whatever helps. I got, I put in lower levels on there just to keep something going. And for a while, it was good for a couple of bucks a month. It used to be $50 a month. But yeah, I got all the stuff in place for when I get this thing finally taken off again. I can start doing stuff and really start, exploiting things. But for now, it's we're still in a rebuilding phase, folks. Okay, and hopefully also get more stuff because I got to re-tack up my deck plans up there. Oh, also, I know I should be doing videos and all this, but frankly, light blocking. Oh, what the hell is this? Oh, prepping the 1350 Enterprise for doing some light blocking, but since nobody wants to see me sitting around putting tape on a piece of plastic and a bunch of, I have not videoed that. Plus the fact that, because let's face it, I'll be, full disclosure, it gets so damn hot around here. I'm generally butt ass naked anyway. Got a fan blowing over here, and there's only one air conditioner in the front room, so it's a sauna. So I'm gonna save anything for video until I actually get some progress going, and hopefully I can also get the stupid lights going in the engines. Because the little swirly lights for the nacelle, the Bussards, for some reason they don't work. So, well, yeah, and again, they're a typical thing right there. I'll put this up here just for the record. Because Star Trek has not been that interesting, frankly, lately. It's just, I've been downloading Strange New Worlds. I haven't watched it because I haven't had the interest in it. Partially because I've seen breakdowns from people whose opinions I fairly well trust on this matter, and it's like, forget it. It's Paul Chato he's been doing reviews on it, and it's like there's a couple of them say, yeah, this feels more, and then others like, this is stupid. This one was dumb. Okay. Is it the one thing that'll get you through that? Yeah. Anyway, but the one thing that will get you through Strange New Worlds is not having any of the baggage from previous Star Trek shows. Inconsistent is being kind. It's like they can't keep their story straight within a single episode half the time. They're not even trying to, it's not even a pastiche of what the original ship was. It's like the truth, the design they have for the Enterprise was John Eves' rejected design for the NX-01. Much smaller, and they felt it looked too much like Kirk's ship. And that's when Doug Drexler came in with his version, and he had it with the design, with the idea of being slightly unfinished. He had from the beginning planned to eventually stick a secondary hull under there, and then Eve's design would fit in very nicely as the one right after that. I had a chat with him on my Doug will talk to anybody. He's the nicest guy in the world. And did manage to clear a few things because if Berman had been in charge and they said, follow with the Daedalus class, that would have been the design to go with, not the tennis ball and beer can design we've been seeing a lot. But then Drexler pointed out, he always figured the Daedalus design was pre-NX. And I think, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I'm dropping that. I'll call it something else. But that, in my mind, as far as lineage of starships go, starting with the NX, who knows what the hell went before, NW, and but NX, and then you go to whatever this thing is that he's put in, because it's got a lot of callbacks to the NX design. Then you go to this bad boy, which is not Constitution class. There's too many differences between this and the 11-footer. This I've been calling this one Bonhomme Richard class, or Bonhomme Richard, if you want to get accurate, real fancy. But I'm also the opinion that this is what the Discovery should look like. With that registry number, that's a Discovery. But I'm not going to call it the Crossfield class. I'm not going to give them any credit with her. And then from there, figure this one would come in around early 2200s, 2210s, 2220s, that sort of thing. And then 2240s, that's when you get the Constitution class. The Enterprise launched 2245. Constitution, a little bit before that. And the later versions of this one would have been refit to Constitution class specs. And that's why you get some of those 1600 registers. Whether or not the Constellation was one of those, I don't know. Could be. Because I figured, Starship, we're not holding on a tangent here, but starships, back during the time, a starship meant, let me sort of reach back. Starship meant this sucker, okay? It was not the same, just a ship that went to the stars. That wasn't it. No, that wasn't enough. Because you had, oh, hell. John Merrick and Bread and Circuses talking about he not just a spaceship but a starship, very special vessel and crew. Starship is about the same thing as saying aircraft carrier or destroyer or escort carrier. It's like they're very specific, and for some reason he settled on the starship. They're just going to call it a starship. And the named class, Constitution class, Exeter class, Kitty Hawk class, you have aircraft carriers. Then you got Nimitz class carrier, Yorktown, Essex class carrier, Gerald R. Ford class carrier. There's still aircraft carriers. And to the untrained eye from a distance, you can't tell one from the other. If you can't see the hull number on the deck, you can't tell which ship is which if you don't know what the details. And that's what I figure with this. It's like, that's why I consider a big misconception that the Enterprise and the Constellation are the same class. They are not. At least not when they came out of the dry docks. And I figured the other ones, the 1600 registries, being considered Constitution class, is they were upgraded during construction. They were late enough in the Constitution class has already been approved, but the Constitution has just been keeled late. The keel's been laid. But a lot of the text in line, so we're going to refit the Excalibur and the Exeter and they'll be considered Constitution class now. And it happens. In some ships do get upgraded from one class to another. Because ship class has to do with capability more than anything else. Not just you don't have to change the constellation from the big ball on the front of the thing, and then to consider because by then you're changing the entire ship. There's nothing left there. But you upgrade the capabilities of better warp core, better computer core, and then you change it. You got to the point where the same capabilities as a Constitution class. It's a Constitution class, and there are modern day ships that do this. They upgrade destroyers from one class to another because they give them better capabilities. That's never really gone into anywhere, but Enterprise had quite a name recognition, mainly because of the war. Yorktown, not so much, because the ship was originally the SS Yorktown. But then going through the thing of changing things around, okay, they don't like the name April because it sounds so wussy, but the name of the captain went from Robert April to James Winter. I got a draft of the cage that has that in there. Then to Christopher Pike. Pike, that's a good strong name. But they also went from Yorktown to Enterprise. Enterprise is one of the more famous ships in the entire fleet because it was the most highly decorated carriers in World War II. That's the one thing they kept from when they scrapped the ship there, because the ship had battle ribbons of its own and a big thing on the conning tower, the big center island thing. They had a section of it that had the ribbons, and they saved that. It's on a signpost outside the shipyard. And so there was a recognition. And of course, at that point, the USS Enterprise nuclear carrier was, had just been launched in like 61 or something. It was big. It made a big thing. It was part of the Cuban Missile, thing. Oh yeah, and the name Enterprise goes back to, they show that in the opening montage of Enterprise. It's a popular name. It's been the name of ferries going across the channel. The one on the capsize was something Enterprise. But the name is. I mean, the last Enterprise, it was like the 8th ship in the Navy to have the name Enterprise. So the new one coming out, CVN 80, will be the 9th Enterprise in the U.S. Navy. But something relevant here. This has been a fun book here. But, oops. I might do a thing just to go through this book. For some reason, there's a lot of stuff in the cage. And there's the piece of the sword that Pike flew in. Yeah. I'm still wondering about this one. This was my concept pitch. The George Powell thing for a War of the Worlds series. There's Matt Jeffries who's working on it. And for some reason, the Enterprise's starboard nacelle is sitting in the back there. Why? We don't know. Obviously, well before they donated it to the Smithsonian. So what the hell were you doing? Of course, also back then, the prop guys at Paramount saw the Enterprise as really kind of a nuisance. It was taking up valuable space, and they wanted to get rid of the thing somehow. Somebody take it. Sure, no problem if they wanted to borrow a nacelle for set dressing for a video, for a short film to do. Yeah, fine, whatever. Well, it's Enterprise is more than just a It's not so. Well, no. Let's see. I got a thesaurus here. Don't have a dictionary in hand. But the word enterprise has more than just do with it goes well beyond just financial stuff. Uh, when engraving environment. Yeah, synonyms for enterprise, endeavor, venture, undertaking, company, concern, firm. That's you said they could just easily call it the USS Endeavor, which is a pretty historical ship in its own. Because yeah, just it's a great undertaking. I mean, something so it's kind of just again sort of boldly going. It's a and essentially they think you're making an investment to make a financial venture. You're going forward to things. This is your enterprise. And I think that was kind of why they chose that, because it went on with that. And whereas Yorktown pretty much set it specifically with the American Revolution and those ships of the war, which also got the hell beat out of them. But oddly enough, when they ran the show in Japan, I understand, and when they dubbed it, they didn't call the ship the Enterprise. They called it the Yamato, because Japan was usually on the receiving end of the Enterprise's efforts during the war, and it's not exactly a revered name in Japanese culture. So yeah, in the Japanese dub thing, they would be called the Yamato, you know. And of course, no problem, Carson, with Space Battleship Yamato and everything. Different show. They've had a few shows with the Yamato in it. That's another question, because I went another tangent with that one also to justify the older class of Starship, because when there's where Silence Had Lease is the episode where we think we see the Yamato, and that's a case. Sorry, Mike, and all that. Mike Kakuda. Doesn't matter. You corrected the error of the registry number in a later graphic. It's a graphic that a lot of people couldn't see on their TV screens. When you have a main character who is looking up and reading, and apparently somehow reading the hull number off the thing and identifying the ship by that, NCC 1305E, the Yamato. It's Yamato. Sorry, that pretty much says that was the registry of the ship. 1305. As a result, so I have to go back and back over here somewhere, I have one of these old AMT models, NCC 1305. That's your first USS Yamato. Second one was a Constitution class. Third would be, Excelsior or whatever. Somehow, and so that the Galaxy class version was an E. Which I don't mind that. I'm fine with some other ship also being acclaimed in the sense that they keep the registry number going on. Because reusing a name, that's no big deal. They reuse names all the damn time. There's been a few USS Maines since the Spanish-American War. The current one is a nuclear submarine. So I'm one when the camp is like, nope, sorry, can't fix it now, Mike, and it's out. It's 1305. We got to live with it, because I think they're trying to keep the thing of the Enterprise being unique and only as they honor Enterprise A, B, C, or D. No. You can have more than, it's a big fleet, okay? A lot of ships also make themselves noteworthy. They're not all lower deckers, okay? An S depends on how fast they get killed off. Because they went from nothing to A to B pretty quick. But anyway, okay, we're getting to the point where we're an hour 15, and I want to keep these things within no more than an hour or so, because otherwise people are not going to click on this thing to watch later. So, like, share, subscribe, PayPal in the link below. Other donation links are on the other videos, and I might stick them on this one later. But I think we will probably wrap it up with that. So, pick up the closing bit. All right, look like a proper video. And there we are, and we will talk at you later. Thank you.